Anonymous story submission. I was adopted from Kyrgyzstan a month before my 9th birthday into a Slavic Baptist family in America. They already had 4 biological children and had adopted several other kids before me. From the outside, we looked like the perfect Christian family. We attended church multiple times a week, dressed modestly, followed strict rules, and were taught that obedience was everything. In the Slavic church community, my parents were respected. People saw a godly family. But behind closed doors, life felt very different. Growing up in the Slavic Baptist culture was filled with fear, control, and shame. Everything revolved around appearances. As children, we were expected to obey immediately, never question authority, and never embarrass the family. I remember being confused by so many things in church. Baptism classes, interviews, tests, adults deciding whether you were spiritually ready. Faith felt less like love and more like pressure. But church itself wasn't the hardest part. Home was. The adopted children in our family were treated differently than the biological children. And even as a child, I could feel it. We had separate dishes, separate silverware, and separate cups. Each of us had our own spoon and cup, and we weren't allowed to use the family dishes. What the heck? Everything had to stay separated. At that time, I didn't fully understand why, but I understood enough to know we were viewed differently. We were constantly reminded that we were adopted. My parents would say things like, sin or rebellion was in your DNA. Oh my goodness. They acted as if because we came from somewhere else, we were automatically more dangerous, more impure, more likely to fail. The biological kids were trusted, the adopted kids were watched. Punishment in our home was extreme. Sometimes we would get punished for things we didn't even understand. We would be locked in our rooms for days at a time without almost nothing. Sometimes only bread and water. No toys, no music, no talking. We were expected to sit there quietly and read old Russian Christian books for hours. I remember crying until my chest hurt while my parents ignored us completely. Sometimes my adopted sister and I would cry ourselves to sleep, knowing nobody was coming. Physical punishment was normal in our home too. My mother hit me constantly with towels, spoons, books, whatever happened to be in her hand. Sometimes it was over tiny mistakes. Sometimes there was no reason at all. Her own mother, my grandmother, was the same way. At church, she looked holy and gentle, but at home, she screamed, humiliated us, and treated us cruelly. It taught me early that people can hide abuse behind religion very easily. One of the most humiliating parts of my teenage years was the obsession with purity and virginity. My mother would regularly force me to prove I was still a virgin.
What?
Oh my gosh. She did the same thing to my adopted sister. We were teenage girls living under constant suspicion, even though we were never allowed to go anywhere or do anything. We weren't allowed normal friendships, social media, sleepovers, camps, or even simple teenage experiences. Every interaction with boys was treated like danger. Right before I got married at 18, my father checked me for my virginity too. Even now, writing those words makes me feel sick.
Stop. I hope these people are in jail.
At the time, I had been so conditioned to obey authority and accept humiliation that I didn't even fully process how wrong it was. In our world, purity mattered more than dignity, more than emotional safety, more than trust. When I was 16, my older sister secretly shared her phone with me sometimes. Around that time, I started talking to a boy from church. We weren't doing anything inappropriate. We had never even kissed. The craziest thing we ever did was hold hands at youth group. But when my parents found out, everything exploded. They accused me of stealing the phone and refused to listen to me or my sister. That night, they told me they were going to send me to jail in the morning. Because I had grown up so isolated from the world, I believed them completely. I genuinely thought my life was over because I texted a boy. Then the threats became worse. My parents said they would kill me and bury me in the backyard with my father's excavator. What?
The heck?
Oh my gosh. Where do they live? Where are these people? My dad owned a construction company and had heavy machinery everywhere. At 16 years old, terrified and emotionally trapped, I believed every word. How am I thinking of everybody that owns a construction company in our area?
Seriously?
That night, I ran away.
Yeah, no
I
kidding.
quietly got dressed and walked out with nothing. I wandered all night long in a complete fear. By
Wow.
morning, my legs were numb and my calves felt like rock. I remember sitting alone in a field after sunrise, exhausted and shaking, wondering if anyone would even care if I disappeared. Eventually, I contacted a friend. His parents got involved, contacted my family, and brought me home. My parents suddenly acted worried and emotional, saying I could have gotten hurt, but they never called the police like threatened to. Years later, I realized fear was simply the way of controlling us. By the time I turned 18, all I wanted was to escape. In the Slavic church culture I grew up in, marriage was basically the only acceptable way for a girl to leave home. So I started looking for someone serious about marriage. That's when I met a man from an extremely strict, separated Slavic church. He was 27, almost 28, and I had just turned 18. After only 2 months, he asked my parents for permission to marry me. They immediately approved. When he proposed, I asked my parents what I should do, and they told me to say yes, so I did. I thought marriage meant freedom. 3 months later, we were married. I was 19, he was 28. I was completely unprepared for marriage or intimacy. I had never been taught about healthy relationships, boundaries, or schmucks. I never had a phone growing up. I had never seen pornography or even had honest conversations about intimacy. Everything was shameful and hidden. The night we got married, my husband me. Oh my gosh. I have carried that secret for years. I remember being terrified and confused, not understanding what was happening or believing I had the right to say no. I was in severe pain afterward for days, bleeding, crying, emotionally numb. And later, after our divorce, he told people I wasn't a virgin and claimed I had just been on my period. Oh my gosh.
I just want to hug this poor girl.
I'm so sorry. That marriage became deeply abusive in many ways, but in 2020, after having my second child during COVID, something finally changed in me. I looked at my children and I realized I could not allow them to grow up inside the same cycle of fear, control, silence, and abuse. So I left. Not just him, everyone. I cut off my family, the church culture, the world I was raised in. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it saved my life.
No kidding.
For the first time, I met people outside of the Slavic community who showed kindness without control. I met my now husband, an American man who taught me what patience, gentleness, and emotional safety actually feel like. Today, I attend a tiny American church where nobody monitors me, humiliates me, or treats me like I'm damaged. For the first time in my life, I feel free. I still carry grief for the little girl who thought fear was love and obedience mattered more than safety. I still struggle with the memories of isolation, shame, and silence. But I also know that abuse hidden behind religion is still abuse. And no culture, family, or church should ever have more power over a child and their humanity. This is my story, and I know I'm not the only one. Wow.
Wow.
I'm just so heartbroken. At the same time, I'm so happy that she got out.
That's insane. I just want to hug this poor girl. Holy cow. And she's so right.
Yeah,
That's just one story. There's so many like that.
yeah. There's so many
I
stories.
truly hope that there's someone's gonna listen to this story, this girl's testimony,
Yeah.
and realizes that
There is hope.
there's hope and this is not the way to live.
Yeah.
Dang, that wrecked me.